Nobody knew his name, not in Madrid, not in Buenos Aires, not even among many football fans. But in the summer of 2026, one man stood in front of the biggest stars in the world and refused to let them score. This is the untold story of Vozinha. Long before the packed stadiums, before the headlines, before millions searched his name online, there was a young boy growing up on the island of São Vicente in Cape Verde. His real name is Josimar José Évora Dias. His father had wanted to name him after Argentine World Cup winner Jorge Valdano, but the country's naming rules at the time didn't allow it. Instead, he was named after Brazilian defender Josimar, another hero of the 1986 World Cup. It was almost as if football had shaped his destiny before he had even kicked a ball. Football wasn't surrounded by world-class academies or endless opportunities. If you wanted to make it, you had to create your own path. As a child, Josimar loved football more than anything. But there was one problem. He was small. Too small, people said, to ever become a goalkeeper. While other children were chosen for teams, he was often overlooked simply because of his height. Years later, he would remember those moments. He believed he was one of the best goalkeepers on his island, but nobody gave him the chance. At home, life wasn't easy either. His father served in the military, his mother worked constantly, so it was his grandparents who raised him. To him, they weren't just grandparents, they were his parents. Whenever football became difficult, whenever life knocked him down, they were the people waiting for him. As a child, he often played against boys older than himself. Whenever he got hurt or upset, he would run back to his grandmother. The older boys laughed. They began calling him Vozinha, a nickname connected to his grandmother. Nobody imagined that one day the entire football world would know him by that name. Years passed. He kept training. He kept believing. Then something changed. As a teenager, he suddenly grew taller. The same people who once rejected him because of his height could no longer ignore his talent. But becoming a professional footballer was still far from reality. There were no shortcuts, no overnight success. Before football could provide him with a living, he worked as an electrician. During the day, he worked. Whenever he had the chance, he trained. While the biggest stars of his generation were already playing in Europe's elite leagues, Vozinha was simply trying to keep his dream alive. Most professional footballers sign their first major contracts before turning 20. Vozinha didn't become a professional until he was 26. For many players, that would have been the end. For him, it was only the beginning. He traveled across different countries: Portugal, Angola, Cyprus, Moldova. Every move was another chance to prove himself. Every club was another step forward. He wasn't becoming famous, he was becoming better. Then came the national team. Representing Cape Verde meant more than football. It meant carrying the hopes of a small island nation that had spent decades living in the shadows of African football. Slowly, Cape Verde began to surprise people. Tournament after tournament, they earned respect. And standing behind them was the goalkeeper almost nobody had believed in. Then came 2026, the FIFA World Cup. For the first time in history, Cape Verde stood among football's giants. Few expected them to survive. Some expected humiliation. Instead, they found something else. They found Vozinha. Shot after shot, he stood his ground. Against some of the greatest attackers on earth, he refused to give in. Every save shocked the crowd. Every minute increased the belief that something impossible was happening. Millions of people who had never heard of Cape Verde were suddenly asking one question: who is Vozinha? The answer wasn't found in a single match. It had taken decades, decades of rejection, decades of hard work, decades of believing when almost nobody else did. His performances became one of the stories of the tournament. But for Vozinha, this moment meant something much deeper. It belonged to the people who had believed in him from the very beginning. His grandparents, the people who raised him, the people who gave him the strength to keep chasing a dream that seemed impossible. Sadly, they weren't there to witness his greatest moment, but their influence could be seen in every save, every celebration, and every tear. Some footballers become legends because they win trophies. Others become legends because they remind us why we fell in love with football in the first place. A goalkeeper who waited years for his opportunity. And finally, a World Cup hero. This wasn't just the story of Vozinha. It was the story of resilience and the story of a nation that proved even the smallest islands can produce giants.